You are listening to episode number 24 of the Happy Choir podcast. Woohoo! Woohoo! I'm really getting crazy there with the screaming, but that's just celebration because I'm happy that I get to share another episode with you here. And if this is your first episode, I am your host and creator, Carlos. I'm your creator. I'm the creator of the Happy Choir podcast. Carlos Cordero, helping you connect with others through choral music. Today, I bring Adrienne Inglis, a wonderful composer, co-founder of Inversion Ensemble, and she's also a wonderful instrumentalist, multi-instrumentalist, I should say. We share our roots from Venezuela, and in this episode, you'll be able to see how our brains explode sometimes trying to talk between Spanish and English. Well, I shouldn't say sí, plus that would be a little gross, but it's fun. And what I love the most about this is that Adrienne shares with us how her compositions include a lot of her culture background and her roots, and what's the process for her to research all of these details and carefully find a place for them in her pieces. The experience of her pieces is amazing, and I can't wait to show you some of them. Before we dive into this episode, I want to say that your support for this podcast is heartwarming. Seeing all of you sharing the episodes, and I can't wait to see the iTunes reviews. Also, if you're part of my Patreon, thank you so much. And if you're thinking, how can I help this podcast? Just go to patreon.com/composercordero, and for as little as $3 a month, you can help us a lot. In today's episode, we have an awesome guest, my dear friend Adrienne Inglis. I'm so excited that you're here, Adrienne. How are you?
I'm fine. It's a real thrill to be on your podcast. Thank you for inviting me.
The theme today is going to be that we usually speak in Spanish because we share our Venezuelan roots, and it's going to be interesting to see my brain explode.
Chévere, ¿no?
Exactly. Well, welcome to the Happy Choir podcast, and it's our pleasure to have you here. I'm excited that I get to share this time with you because in your music, and this is one of the main reasons why you are here, your music involves so much of your roots and so much of honesty sharing that I can't wait for our conversation, for you to share with our audience your music and your process.
Thank you.
So in your music there is, the combination of instruments, language, expressions. It all finds its way there. I feel that as a composer you sit down and make all of this an experience for the audience. Would you say that's an accurate description, that you take all of this from your roots and make it a choral piece?
Yes, I hope it's a good experience for the audience. I've found a rich history in my background that I like to share, much of it because it's true or resonates with people of similar backgrounds or even outside that cultural area.
That's awesome. And for me, being in your audience, because I've been now in several of the Inversion Ensemble concerts, I feel that it's a journey for me. It's a surprise every time that I get to hear one of your pieces, because one never knows how you're going to include the next bit that you researched about. I feel, as you said, that you found these interesting things about your past, your present, about your family, and you bring us in the story. You take us as an audience into your story. So first of all, thank you so much for that, because it's a real pleasure to be in your audience.
I'm glad you enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so to start from the beginning, we would love to hear, what's your story with choral music and music in general?
Well, at bedtimes when my sister and I were little, we would always sing songs, and we would each pick a favorite song and had a growing repertoire. And I don't even really remember the songs particularly, but at some point we spent a summer in upstate New York, and there happened to be a piano in the rental home. And so my sister Jennifer and I started going to the piano and picking out the songs that we knew on the piano. And so when we got back to Berkeley, our parents signed us up for piano lessons. And then after a few years, I started taking flute and she took violin, and it sort of continued from there. And I loved music so much that I continued to major in music. I did sing in choir in high school one semester when the choir director talked me into singing, but I didn't. Singing hasn't been a huge part of my past. I'm really more a flutist than a singer.
And that's something that I also love about your story, because then you use all of these different instruments that you play and that you get to explore in your life now into choral music. And I'm excited to also get to that. But I love how you say that choral music was not so much part of your past, but now it's your present, and now it's part of what you do besides performing and teaching flute, right?
Yes.
Wonderful. And last month we just had an interview with Robbie Labanca, who also co-founded with you and Trevor Shaw the Inversion Ensemble. Is that something that you envisioned growing up as a musician, or is that something new for you?
I had no idea I would do anything like that. I wouldn't have anticipated that even 10 years ago. I started singing in my church choir as I don't know, 20 years ago maybe. And then also with Chaski, a flute and harp duo. We did a lot of Latin American folk music and did a lot of arrangements and, sang some, but I wasn't the lead singer. And as I did arrangements and variations, it sort of really developed some compositional skills that I wasn't really aware that I was doing. And then finally, when my mother died suddenly, I decided to write a piece in her memory. And so I wrote a Vals Venezolano because she was Venezuelan. And it was, not just a simple folk waltz, but people really liked it. So I was encouraged to dabble a little more into composing. And then I was also hired to play in orchestras for Chorus Austin and Texas Choral Consort, which is now Panoramic Voices, and always loved playing in the orchestra for choral music because it's just a spectacular combination of voice and soloists and instruments, and the music is outstanding, and it's one of my favorite things to do. I also love playing in the opera orchestra. So Texas Choral Consort went on a tour to Italy, and Trevor Shaw was on the tour as well. And we were riding on the bus from one city to another and started chatting about vocal pieces, choral pieces we'd written, and wanted an opportunity to perform them. And so that was part of the idea. And then he later talked with Robbie, and then we, a few months later, formed Inversion Ensemble. And it's been a most incredible blessing. And it has really changed my life in a way that now I start looking at the world through a composer's lens, and I look for text, and it's looking for new ideas or new modalities or new colors, new rhythms to try out in a compositional process.
I completely understand. Everything suddenly becomes an idea or a sound that you can use, or that, oh, I hear this text, maybe that can be used to create a new piece. Everything just becomes part of a larger
Exactly.
piece. I loved hearing this story, and it's such a beautiful story how you got into composition. Do you feel, this might be an abstract question, but what's your relationship with composition when you started to learn that you could write music? Was it something that freed you up, or that you felt that helped you express?
All of those things, but it's often a struggle. Some pieces come easily, and I'm realizing that it's usually pieces with Latin American roots that kind of reveal themselves to me more easily than if I'm trying something different that may be a little foreign. But it fills me up, and then to hear it performed or to be part of the performance is just an unparalleled experience. It's just thrilling every single time, and I learn as we perform and rehearse and perform my pieces. I try to listen and see what could work better next time, and I often go back and revise things a little bit. I try to learn from every opportunity that I can. Composition is, it's tremendous. Performance is wonderful. You perform, everybody hopefully likes it, they clap, and you walk off stage, and they'll have a memory of it, but it's gone. It's off into the ether. But a composition lasts. Another group can play it or sing it, and there's something, I guess, an amount of legacy there, that, or leaving an impact, which is gratifying.
That's wonderful. And I do agree with this idea that the performance happens, and of course it's in your mind, and it's an experience that everybody that was in that room went into. And if we're lucky to get a recording, everybody that can listen to it. But also when you have the composition that you can replicate, it's awesome, because then you can get more experiences of that same piece, and it's often different. It's often a new experience when it is by other ensemble, or even the same ensemble but with different audience.
Mm-hmm.
Have you, when you started writing, did you think that you will hear your music perform? Was it something that you just expected or wished to happen?
I wrote my first choral pieces for my church's choir. My choir director encouraged me, and so I would write 2-minute anthems, and they were on some scripture that caught my attention, and he liked it, and we'd sing it, and it was fun. So I already had kind of a built-in, and I learned a lot from that experience. I had a group, and they still sing my things sometimes,
How
and I'm hoping
wonderful.
to write something for them next year. Well, we're in discussion about that. So I've had people get groups perform for a while my work.
That's wonderful. And was it something that came to your life because you searched it, or the opportunity present to you? How did that happen?
Hmm. It wasn't so much an opportunity. I guess my group Chaski has performed many times Misa Criolla by Ariel Ramirez, and I thought my familiarity with folk rhythms and styles from around South America might let me write a similar type of mass, Spanish language mass, but not representing just Argentine rhythms, but rhythms from all around South America. So I thought, well, I'll do that. So I took uh, different styles. The credo is a Venezuelan merengue, and which hardly anybody does because it's in 5/8 time, and it's really hard to do. But it was fun, and we performed that a few times, and we recorded that, and that's been great. We even went to Arkansas, and they did that a few years ago, and that was really a great experience. One of those experiences where another group does it, and we were the accompaniment, because not very many people can do all the different guitars and flutes and all that kind of stuff, and harp. But it was a really exciting, thrilling experience to work with them.
And I bet that it feels sometimes when I write in Spanish, I feel that I'm helping somehow to bring a story in Spanish to the audience that might not get so much Spanish in their life, or even musically in Spanish. And I feel that you're doing that with your music. For example, bringing the Venezuelan 5/8 to concerts that might not have ever heard of this merengue venezolano. It's awesome.
Right. Right. Have you written Venezuelan style pieces? I know Ayúdame was a really incredibly powerful piece, uh, but I don't know your repertoire as well as I should. Have you taken folk rhythms and set them?
Not that much, and yes. Okay, that question, that answer is a little ambiguous, but here's the answer. So, for a flute piece that I did, I took some. It's escaping my mind right now. See, first brain exploding from Spanish to English. Tonada, tonada
Okay.
venezolana. I took some tonada characteristics, and I made a flute and tape piece. So it was me recording the cuatro
Uh-huh.
and reading up. A friend from Venezuela has been reading the poem that I used to create this piece. So it's a solo flute piece that I actually should send to you. I haven't
Yes,
shared it
please.
with you, but also I've done some children music when I used to conduct in El Sistema at Venezuela.
Hmm.
I did some rhythms, experimented with rhythms there, because I wouldn't say that I do a lot of Venezuelan rhythms in my music, but I'm so eager to explore them. I'm always researching, especially joropo. I just
Hmm.
love the the tempo of it and the excitement.
Hmm.
And it's one of my to-do lists to learn how does Venezuela speaks through my music in musical terms, because as you said, and thank you so much, Ayúdame was one of the ways that Venezuela spoke through me, but in other ways, in more lyrical and more the situation there. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's amazing, and it's an inspiration for me to see that you are bringing these roots and many more, because what I've learned also in your concerts and in your pieces, that you don't just stay with one story, but you want to find where do you come from and who your family were and what were their stories. And it's not only Venezuelan roots, right?
Yeah, and before we get off of the topic of joropo, my sister Jennifer, who also sings with me in Inversion Ensemble, bugged me for quite a while to write a piece with a joropo rhythm. So I finally wrote. I found a beautiful Spanish sonnet and set that to joropo rhythm for harp and cuatro, and it's really fun. So she was happy about that.
Wonderful. And I just wanted to say also hello to Jennifer.
Yes.
We love you, Jennifer.
Yeah, I've done as and getting back to family history, I've done a lot of genealogy research and found that it really brings history to life in a way that never did when I was young and I thought history was boring. But suddenly when you realize, oh, my great 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 grandfather's printing press was trashed in an anti-abolitionist riot in upstate New York or someplace,
Wow.
you realize your ancestors are part of history. And the one that really inspired me to write a piece recently was the learning that my eighth great grandmother, Mary Esty, was accused of being a witch in Salem, Massachusetts, and then falsely convicted and then hanged in the whole Salem witchcraft trials. So that was a really powerful story to tell, and using the transcriptions of the court records, which are preserved and scanned and transcribed, and then I got a friend to write some verse to create a setting because there was a lot going on in that area in the Massachusetts colony that we don't really get when we study a little bit about the witchcraft trials. And then catching trying to weave into it some of the psalms that Mary and her family would have been singing at their worship at home, to get weave that all together. And it was really exciting to work on, and it was really thrilling to be a part of that performance.
I was part of the audience of that performance, and I have to say that it was very, very powerful. And the way that you basically painted the story with the choir and the flute and with the soloists was Paige, right? Paige Stephens.
Paige Stevens was fabulous. Yes.
Yeah, and the choir just did. I mean, and your writing was so open, so you didn't stay just with notes, but also with these effects and screeches, screams. I
Yes.
just, I just love how the story unfolded there on. And I remember it was the piece before intermission, right? So
Mhm.
it was you. Then we had that time of analyzing what just happened and thinking about this experience that we just went into. So that was a really powerful piece. Thank you so much for writing it.
Oh, thank you. And the choir really stepped up because I
Yes.
had added some staging elements that I thought, oh, we just don't have time to rehearse all these things. But they said, no, 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 we need to we need to do these things, otherwise it doesn't make sense. So the girls and their shrieking their fits, and then the bailiff, and so the staging was really they really stepped forward and made it really successful. I'm grateful to them for that.
Yeah, and it's awesome to then know that it comes because sometimes it all comes from story that belongs to your family, to you, and that's something so different because most of the times, as a composer, I feel that we find texts are that we can relate to our story, but that weren't written by our family, or maybe they are not directly related, but they are something that we want to say or we want to set to music.
Hmm.
But in this case, then you bring something that it's completely yours, completely part of your past, of your family past. And how does that feel? Or how does setting to music these stories feels to you?
It's very gratifying and fulfilling. It's nice to be able to share that and be a part of that. It was, yeah, it very fulfilling. And I've tried to, my some of my family, they're scattered all over the place, but they were able to watch the live stream and appreciate the story because it's their story too. All of my cousins, it's
Yeah.
their ancestor too.
Yeah, that's true. And you're bringing, that's true. You're showing them how you are then analyzing this story and how you are processing this part that you just discovered. Getting back to the addition of instruments in the choral music, I know that there are not so many pieces out there. Of course, we're in a moment that we're discovering more pieces or more different ways to make choral music or involve other things in choral music. Hey people, I want to take a quick second to tell you how your support makes a difference. When you support me on patreon.com, you are not only giving $3 a month, but you are giving my brand a vote of confidence. This translates to helping several other artists to connect through choral music. Think about it as a cup of coffee that you invite me once a month, only that is way more impactful and personal. Plus, you get to be part of the behind the scenes of my career as a composer, with the many perks that I shared in there. Even if you're not able to give right now, your support listening to this podcast is great, even more if you leave a review in iTunes. Patreon.com/composercordero is the link that you want to visit or share with others. Hope to see you there. For a long time, it's we're just used to the choir a cappella or with piano. How does bringing these different instruments to these pieces felt to you? What was going through your mind in terms of, was it scary? Were you doubting that this was a good thing, or were you confident about this?
The use of instruments to me is very natural because I come from the world of instrumentalists and I've done arrangements for wind quintet and played in orchestras and for many years. So, for instance, the piece that I was commissioned to write last year, the Rage and Reconciliation of King Lear, I wanted to include an instrument that wasn't flute because flute just didn't seem like it would cut it for representing King Lear. And I needed a different instrument that was going to be expressive, beautiful, also to because he goes mad, so that would be able to express some insanity and just a little bit of craziness. So to me, the perfect instrument was bassoon, and I ended up also adding piano, and it was really fun to write for bassoon. I'd written an arrangements for bassoon, so I'm familiar with the instrument, but just to make sure I wasn't going too as far astray, I during opera rehearsals at the break, I would go up to a bassoon player friend of mine and say, "Hey, Daniel, is this what's this like on bassoon? Is this going to be how's this going to work?" And he'd say, "Well, that's going to sound like a donkey. Is that what you want?" And I go, no, it's not what I want. So he was really helpful. And unfortunately, he couldn't play the performance because he was out of town, but we had another fabulous bassoonist come and play. And it was really a treat to have that combination of instruments with the chorus, which strangely enough, I got really attracted to this idea of original pronunciation of Shakespeare because I'd heard about it, and so I contacted the people who were part of that movement, and they helped. So we pronounced the Shakespeare as we were singing as best as they can figure it was pronounced in Shakespeare's day, which is a little bit Jamaica, a little bit pirate, a little bit Scots and Irish. It doesn't really sound like highborn British English that we think of. So that was another really an interesting aspect of that piece, that experience.
How wonderful! And it's so fun to me to see when the interview goes somewhere else, and we have all of these details behind the scenes, because then that's also super important for me to learn as a composer. If I'm for our audience to listen that you just went there and asked your friends, I feel that's important, because sometimes we can feel, oh, I have to know everything because I'm the composer and I should know orchestration. But as you said, you wanted to ask a bassoonist what do they think of this part that you were writing and how would it sound. That's awesome, because then, and from this particular story, I see how you go and get the answers that you want. For example, the pronunciation of the Shakespeare text. Has that always been the case? Is that something that you've developed with time?
It's always been the case because I just try to learn from everything and everyone around me. Uh, Learning because I still think of singing as 90% magic. I just don't get how
I love it.
singers sing. I mean, it's like the think method or something. I mean, with instruments, you know you breathe, you move, you play, you finger put keys down. But with singing, you just open your mouth and out comes music, and it's so. I still don't really get singing that much. I mean, I sing, of course, and I enjoy and I understand, and I sing through the parts and that I'm writing to see how they are. But instruments I'm a little more comfortable with that. But I do try to learn from every experience that I'm in, whether it's playing John Williams music with the Central Texas Philharmonic, or playing Celtic tunes with Shanna on the harp, or whatever. I'm always trying to learn. I'll even go outside and transcribe bird songs, which I've done many times.
Yes. And that's one
So
of the things that I wanted to talk about here. But I want to say quickly that I love the idea of singing being magic, because, well, number one, I also feel that way. And
mhm.
I still find incredible that we can, for example, match pitch. I have no idea how did I learn to, put my voice in a specific pitch at a specific time. And I still find that that's magical, and it also makes it more beautiful. So I love it. I love that idea.
I agree exactly.
I have to say that I've not only, since meeting you, I've not only learned your love about birds and nature, but also in your bio, in your website, I love that it's right there. I love how you introduce us to your personality and your idea of loving birds and nature when you are not playing music. I have to say too that I love the updates of the rain in
Oh.
Facebook. It's always that's always so. I love it so much. Yeah. In your website, also I found these quotes. I'm gonna read from it. Weaving voices with harp, flutes, and guitars brings together beautiful oral colors in an acoustical setting. I I wonder, when did you decide to include the instruments? Was it a need, or was it a special project that you had? How did this happen?
With those specific instruments?
Yeah, with the folk instruments and the, because I understand, as you said, that as a flautist you felt natural to bring the instruments to the pieces, but I
Yes.
wonder if it happened because you wanted it, because you felt that the piece needed to have these instruments, or if it was kind of a commission or a project.
No, it was really more cultural background. I grew up hearing Venezuelan music, aguinaldos at Christmas time, and then Shanna Norton and I started playing flute and harp, classical flute and harp music
Hmm.
together. And then I thought, let's try this piece. And so I pulled out Alma Llanera, and we played it, and the audience loved it. And this was a long time ago, 35 years ago, and we thought, well, let's try some more. So we tried some more Latin American Venezuelan pieces, and everybody just really liked it. Sure, they liked our classical stuff. That was fine. But, this was something special and something that flute and harp duos weren't doing. So we both joined the UT Brazilian Ensemble and the UT Andean Music Ensemble when we were starting to play together, and learned those styles of music. I met my husband there. We worked with the director, Dan Dickey, who ended up joining our group, and learned just so much. And we found that it was really appealing. So that was flutes panpipes and quena, and then her harp. And then Dan would play guitar, charango, ronroco, cuatro, tiple, all kinds of different things. And then he would sing. And we had a lot of fun for many, many years. And we still do, although he moved to Hawaii, so we don't play as often that repertoire. But so I was arranging and writing pieces for us, for Chaski to play.
Did you feel that then having these instruments was a challenge for you to, let's say, notate or to include in the program? Or what were the challenges as a composer that you found during this experiment?
Well, I guess the main challenge was writing something that felt authentic. I mean, true folk music is like a tradition, like an oral tradition. So it's sort of an oxymoron to say you're composing folk music, because it's, then it's a competition. But for them, it was easy, because I would say, okay, well, here's a Vals Venezolano, Venezuelan waltz. Here's the chords. I'll play the melody. Y'all just fill in the details. And then they would play the valse drum, and Shanna would play a beautiful, harmony, bass line and all kinds of stuff. I wouldn't actually have to write it all out. So I was just writing lead sheets. And even when I wrote Misa Trinitaria, I wrote, play this in a style of a samba argentina, or play this in a style of a merengue venezolano. And I wasn't giving any information beyond that for any poor hapless choir to try to take it on, which is why they don't take it on, because they go, we don't know how to do this. But I haven't done a very good job notating those folk rhythms or folk styles. I did have to. I am doing it for El Sol, writing it out so that another group could do it on guitar or something, or if they don't have a cuatro or something.
And I love the idea, as you say, because sometimes with folk music, those are the details, right? We're trying to bring something to classical music or to a classical concert kind of way that doesn't really have to be notated, because the way that it was born or that it happened was in that way. Let's get together and let's create this and let's pass it on in an oral way. So it's interesting, and I know that there are many people out there writing and documenting these expressions, and it's awesome. But I also love that you as a composer could figure to write, let's play this way, let's do this sheet musics, because then you get rid of the challenge or of the obstacle, and you still get the product out there, which for many composers can be very daunting, to think, if I'm going to notate this, then it's going to be too difficult, and then they don't do the project. I myself sometimes, might have thought, oh no, this will be too complicated, I move on from project. But thinking of that resourceful way of bringing the music and the experience to the audience is great.
Well, I hope so. It is a challenge, because it is kind of a cross-section of folk and classical.
Exactly.
A piece I'm working on now for our May water concert is a setting of a few verses of a poem by Alfonsina Storni. And it's just really exquisite poetry. And I thought, this was written in 1919, and she was in Buenos Aires. And I thought, I think I'm going to need to bring in elements of tango, but I don't really know that much about tango music. And so I'm now in the process of researching what can I do? And I have written a sort of a pseudo tango setting before, but it's going to be really fun to bring in some piano with some, and get it'll be a double choir piece with some ocean soundscape work, and then the poem set to music. But it'll be really fun to see how I can bring out a feel for the tango in a setting like that.
I just want to quickly remind you that all of the links that are mentioned in this episode will be in the show notes in thehappychoir.com/podcast, or find it in the description of this episode. Also, once you are there in the website, you can subscribe to the newsletter. This will come with a $20 discount for your next choral recording, a free guide that I've created just for you on the things that I've discovered in my career on how to be a happy composer, conductor, or singer. You will also receive a weekly email with podcast episodes, blog posts, and music. I hope to see you there. Now, let's get back to this episode. We're so lucky to have you here and to have Inversion doing it, and I'm so looking forward to these concerts.
Oh, great. Thank you.
It sounds great the way that you approach it, because if you don't know something, you research it. It's not, you sit there and say, okay, I'm not going to do it. And I love that for, I mean, myself and for our audience, that's gold, because then to see you there, oh, I don't know about tango, I'm going to research and I'm going to make this piece. That's inspiring. Do you feel that that fire to research and to compose always came from within, from you, or did you have any mentor or somebody who helped you along the way, telling you to research and to include these instruments?
That's a great question. My father was a college science teacher in a community college, and he loved the scientific method. And so my sister and I grew up in like a science classroom, it felt like. And so he was always asking questions and getting us to think about things. And I think there's maybe a little bit of that in how I look at a project and think, well, how am I going to learn? And then on top of just trying to research and figure out how to do a better job of what I want to express, I try new ideas. I want to try a new setting, or try a different style, or a different modality, or a different rhythm. So I'm try to learn from those other projects. One of the things that I like most about what somebody might say about my music is, wow, this piece is like nothing I've heard you write before. Because that means that I'm trying to do different styles, and they're with mixed success, I'm sure. But I'm always trying to learn. Maybe that's from my father's scientific approach.
I love how something that is not musical, it's not exactly musical, then it becomes part of the music and it becomes part of the way that you as a composer create. Because I strongly believe, and I think that it's something that I speak here in the Happy Choir podcast of, as composers, we take our entire life and put it into the music. We cannot escape of, these little details, these little things of our personality or of our story. And I love to hear that this thing growing up could help you now to work the way that you work to shape a piece. That's awesome.
Thank you.
What would you say? And this is then now flipping the question, because asking you, about the mentor now, I feel that you are part of a voice of for composers out there thinking about this idea of including their own instruments, including explorations that might not be the standard that you see in a concert, but that it will without doubt enrich the experience of a concert. What would you say to composers out there thinking about doing this?
To just write stuff down and think of ideas, and I experiment and ask questions. I always make my flute students compose their own Mozart cadenzas, because it's better that way, and it's something that they really create and then they're proud of, and it's like nobody else's cadenza. But for other composers, I mean, and for up and coming composers, and I'm one of them, it's an encouragement to try things and not be afraid of failing or making a mistake, because we just learn. One of the things that Brent Baldwin, and I know he was one of your guests, recommended to me is a couple of books about writing. Now this is writing, creative writing, or some whatever kind of writing. One of them was by Anne Lamott, Bird by Bird, and it's fascinating that Anne Lamott just gets you to just write it down. Even it may not be till the fourth draft that you really like it, but just write. And that's what I would tell young people.
And what it's interesting is that we're all making mistakes out there. So, we're
Right.
all just trying, piece after piece after piece to then find what is it that we want to say, how do we want to say it. And some people might disagree, of course, but that's just life. People will agree with you, people will disagree, and you just keep making art. I love that
Exactly.
book, by the way.
Yes. Oh, good. Good.
Yeah, strongly advice for everybody in the creative life, and it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
For a follow-up question, then how do you approach ensembles with your pieces? Do you approach them before writing it, during the process, or after?
Uh, hmm. Usually after, because I'm so fortunate to be able to write for Inversion Ensemble and Chaski and whoever local groups that they perform it, and then I'll say, oh, well, maybe so and so might like to perform this, and I'll send it to them, and but people who perform it are usually the ones I have contacts with. I am trying to get my music out, some of them especially, more because I'm starting to take a turn in my composition to include more environmental advocacy, not just nature pieces, which I've done for a while, but to really have a message of helping to care for our earth. And so I may be a little more assertive about getting some pieces out there that more people might do if they agree with that philosophy.
That's wonderful, and that again brings another one of your interests to the composition and to the experience for the concert. And I feel that that's such a relevant subject right now that there's no way, there's no way to escape of what's happening around us. And I feel that bringing value through choral music and through performance, it's a wonderful idea. Do you have a plan for it? Is that something that you are in the process of creating?
I wrote a piece last year to address some climate issues. I commissioned a poem by a Glaswegian poet that was just stunningly beautiful, and the Song of the Harp Seal for women's treble voices and harp. And her poem, she didn't consider herself an environmentalist particularly, and I thought, okay, she's the perfect one to ask to write a poem, because there was a story about a harp seal that a little baby harp seal that died way out of its range, way south of its range. And so I thought, if she can bring her beautiful poetic voice to this story, she will become more aware of environmental issues, and then by the same token share that with others. So that was kind of the first piece with a stronger environmental message. I'm working on a piece setting some of Greta Thunberg's recent speeches to music, and that's really hard for me because I'm so passionate about it. It's very difficult to get past my anger and activist tendencies and just try to think about the music and what's going to be most effective. So it's right now it's a jumbled mess. So I'm not sure how I'm going to sort that out, but that's in
Totally
the
understand.
pipeline. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally understand, because sometimes I just sit down and then, I'm in projects that are either highly emotional, or, as you said, I get angry in the middle of the thing and I'm like, I don't want to work on this anymore.
Right.
Yeah, one just gets too involved to a project. So
Right.
I
Right.
totally
So
understand working through that.
that's good. Glad to know somebody else out there experiences that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And we're close to the end of this interview. What's one thing that you wish conductors will know or do when thinking of programming this music, with thinking of programming, for example, environmental music? Is that the word that I want to use? Environmental?
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't
Um,
know. Brain explode number two.
yeah. Exactly.
When they're thinking of programming a concert that includes these topics or these folk instruments, what's the thing that you wish they will know or do?
Well, I think that conductors or artistic directors shouldn't be afraid to program uh, pieces that have an advocacy point of view, whether it's about social justice or environmental justice or climate change. It's going to open the conversation, and even if it might not everybody in the audience might agree with the point of view, it starts the conversation or continues the conversation. And I think that's really important to have. I'd also encourage artistic directors not to shy away from unusual instruments, because it can often be done on a different type of instrument. Or if you contact the composer, sure, do it on guitar, or do it on an alto flute or something similar, so that the piece gets done and we get a flavor of that, even if it's not the hairy goat-skinned bombo that maybe it was originally called for.
Right there, I just love what you said, because that's something that I strongly advocate for: conductors contacting composers. Because
yes.
One, we are alive, right? And number two, we have emails, as Robbie said on our previous conversation. But as you said, because we are open then to consider changes, or even if you, I don't know somebody there and say, hey, let me make some calls and I will find you a performer. You never know.
Right.
So I love that idea of keeping the conversation open, but also being open to bring this to your audience and to give a space for this, because this is important music that needs to be there, not only because of their message, but also because of their stories or their the history background that they came with, and to expose to expose people to these different rhythms, harmonies if there are harmonies, but also culture. We live in such a rich culture environment, I guess I want to say, that I feel that bringing this to a concert is another flavor that we can enjoy.
Yes, I agree.
Adrienne, do you have any announcements for us that you want to share?
Yes, I'd like to invite everyone to Inversion Ensemble concert that has to do with water on May 30 and May 31 in Austin. We'll be premiering the piece that I'm writing, setting Alfonsina Storini's a portion of her poem Frente al Mar to sort of a tango rhythm. You can find out information at inversionensemble.com. I haven't named the piece yet, so we'll see what it ends up being called, but I invite everybody to that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, if you want to know the title of the piece, but also listen to this great experience, you don't want to miss this concert. It's going to be awesome. Now, where can people find you online?
I have a website, adrienneinglis.com. You can go there to find out basic information about my upcoming concerts and pieces that I've written.
Yes, and when you go there, I love that you have your bio right there, and please read it because it's so wonderful. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and then to listen to your music in your SoundCloud, of course, all of this will be available in the show notes to share with our audience. But I just want to thank you, Adrienne, because this conversation was so great, and I feel that it's so inspiring to then go out there and explore more of who we are as a composers and how we can bring it to our music and to our choral music.
Yes, it was my pleasure, Carlos. Thank you for inviting me. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Ciao.
Ciao.
See you in the next episode of the Happy Choir podcast. Ciao, people. Woohoo! You've been listening to the Happy Choir podcast. For more information and show notes, visit thehappychoir.com. You are listening to part 2 of episode 24 of the Happy Choir podcast. Hola, people. I am Carlos Cordero, host and creator of the Happy Choir podcast, helping you connect with others through choral music. I am, as the rest of the world, trying to stay sane. That's difficult to say. Trying to stay sane at home, and with a little bit of a allergy, I guess, so that's why my voice sounds like this. But I'm here to share with you awesome music. My dear friend Adrienne Inglis and I had a wonderful conversation in episode 24, as you might have just listened. Hey, English is hard, so I'm trying my best here. As you might have just listened in episode 24. If not, I recommend you go there first and listen to Adrienne share with us her journey of bringing her roots to her music. In this episode, we're going to listen to 3 pieces. But before, I want to just take a second to remind you how you can support further this brand and my entire career as a composer. If you go to patreon.com/composercordero, you will be able to help this brand with as little as $3 a month. Now, let's go to Adrienne's music. The first piece that we're going to listen today is El Sol, which means the sun. This is a piece for chorus, cuatro, and harp. Trevor Shaw is the conductor, Inversion Ensemble the chorus, Adrienne Inglis in the cuatro, and Shannon Norton in the Scottish harp. Enjoy! Isn't that amazing? I love that she uses joropo, which is from Venezuela, to create this piece. Now, let's go to Ren. This piece is performed by Inversion Ensemble, conducted by Joshua Chai, and of course, in the flute, we have Adrienne Inglis. As you might have heard in the previous interview, she is a multi-instrumentalist, and I love that she is part of the performance too. Ren is a piece for chorus and flute. Enjoy! Hey people, I want to take a quick second to tell you how your support makes a difference. When you support me on patreon.com, you are not only giving $3 a month, but you are giving my brand a vote of confidence. This translates to helping several other artists to connect through choral music. Think about it as a cup of coffee that you invite me once a month, only that it's way more impactful and personal. Plus, you get to be part of the behind the scenes of my career as a composer, with the many perks that I shared in there. Even if you're not able to give right now, your support listening to this podcast is great, even more if you leave a review in iTunes. Patreon.com/composercordero is the link that you want to visit or share with others. Hope to see you there. If you listen to the last interview with Adrienne Inglis in episode 24 of the Happy Choir podcast, you know what piece is coming. It is Innocent Blood. This piece is amazing. It's for mezzo-soprano solo, chorus, organ, and flute, also doubling in bass flute. To learn more about this piece, you can go to the interview if you haven't listened to that. But in this, you're going to hear Inversion Ensemble and the world premiere of this piece. My dear friend Paige Stephens make such an emotional and amazing job with this piece. She is the mezzo-soprano solo. We have Cheryl Stack in the organ, Trevor Shaw is the conductor, and of course, Jennifer Inglis, our composer of this piece, is on the flute and bass flute. What an amazing team to bring this piece to life.
and sometimes not, when several confess that they have been guilty of bewitching them.
Well, sir, would you have me confess that which I never knew?
Look, her hands are open, her hands are open. Look, her hands are open, her hands are open. Is this the woman?
Could he ask if you are the woman? Could he ask if you are the woman? Could he ask if you are the woman?
Put up her head, for while her hair is bound, the necks of these are broken, broken. What do you say to this?
Why, God will know.
Nay, God knows now.
I know he does.
What did you think of the actions of others before your sisters came out? Did you think it was witchcraft?
I cannot tell.
Why do you not think it is witchcraft?
It is an evil spirit, but whether it be witchcraft, I do not know. She might be the woman. She might be the woman. She might be possible. But if it be possible, let no more innocent blood be shed. Let no more innocent blood be shed, which cannot be avoided in the way and course you go in. I question not but that your honors do the utmost in your powers in the detecting of witchcraft and witches, and would not be guilty of spilling innocent blood for the world. But in my own innocence, I know you are in the wrong way. The Lord in his infinite mercy direct you in the great work. I humbly beg of you that your honor would be pleased to examine these afflicted persons strictly, and keep them apart for some time. Likewise try some of the confessing witches. I, being confident several of them belie their guilt, if you examine them again, I question not, but you will see an alteration of the things they say. I cannot confess that I have made a league with the devil. I cannot confess it. I know not the least thing of witchcraft, and therefore I dare not belie my own soul. The Lord knows, the Lord knows.
It is such an amazing and emotional, powerful work. There are so many words that can describe this, but I'm glad that I was there in the audience to see this performance and hope that you get to also listen to it live. I'm grateful for Adrienne and Inversion Ensemble to let us use their recording of this piece and the other pieces in this episode. For now, as difficult and challenging as it is, let's keep staying home and knowing that after all of this coronavirus outbreak is done, we will know that we did the right thing. Remember to check out the Happy Virtual Choir where you can participate too, and also that this is the brand where we connect through choral music. Hope to see you in the next episode of the Happy Choir podcast. Ciao, people! Woohoo! You've been listening to the Happy Choir podcast. For more information and show notes, visit thehappychoir.com.